Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Kirsty, and this is our podcast, Love Needs No Words.
Today we're joined by our really good friend Sarah, who we met on this journey. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
So just a bit about Sarah. Her daughter Briony is 4 years old, non-speaking, and received her diagnosis of autism this year. So it's so lovely to have you on to talk about Briony. Did you want to start by just chatting through a bit about your journey and maybe what were the signs to you that she might be neurodiverse?
Yeah, so I think it's quite similar to both of your journeys. So there's a lot of similarities when we talked through before. I started with some hearing issues initially, glue ear, grommets, all sounding very familiar. And actually, for quite a long time, I really thought that was the cause of her speech delay. So we started to try and find the cause, and I initially came to the conclusion that it was hearing related. Made so much sense because she wasn't responding to her name. She'd had a series of ear infections, and I was really fixated on that for quite a long time. And we did eventually get a diagnosis of glue ear. We did eventually get grommets fitted. But by the time we finally got the grommets fitted after the waiting list, we were already fairly sure that she was autistic because there were other signs. And I think it's probably something that a lot of people have gone through where you want there to be the magic button that's going to help. And actually, there's so much more to it. So with Briony, I think one of her biggest signs really early on was that she didn't imitate. And I knew it was about more than speech, and it did take me a while to accept it. I found that I went back and forth a lot for probably a year. One day I'd be like, I just think it's a hearing. Other days, like, I really think she's autistic. Other days, I'm like, no, she seems fine today. And the more I read up about autism, and the more I watched her, and the more I watched all the signs that I now know are signs of autism. So she was stimming. She wasn't interested in other children her own age. She didn't play with toys in the neurotypical way. So she'd be interested in a wheel spinning, but she wouldn't ever play imaginatively. She'd fixate on random objects. Like, she went through a very big fish slice phase. Just loads of little things that now, and I watch videos back now and I can see her flapping her hands and jumping on the spot, and there's all these things. I'm like, yeah, those are all signs. And now I know what I'm looking for. It's really obvious. But I think with her, the very biggest sign was the speech delay, and that's what kind of led us down the journey initially. I think when we got the diagnosis, I expected to get like a magic pack that's going to with all the answers in, and
yeah. You
get about 2 A4 sheets of paper telling you what autism is, which by that point you already know. And in a weird way, it doesn't change anything at all. It does, ultimately, because it's another line on all your reports and everything that says this child needs more support. But by the point we got the diagnosis, we were already applying for her EHCP. We were already applying for schools. We were already doing all these things with autism in mind because we knew she was autistic in our hearts. But having the diagnosis just helps add fuel to your argument that she needs support. And I think that's, it was anticlimactic, but in the long run it will help. And actually, it was our second appointment with a paediatrician. We'd had one initially, and he'd been very dismissive. He was very fixated on a certain kind of autism, very fixated on children with sensory issues, very fixated on eye contact, all these things that now we know are signs of autism, but not all autistic children have them. And Briony does make eye contact, not all the time, but she does, and she doesn't have huge sensory issues. And I was complaining about it to a friend because he was basically saying, we'll see you in a year, which is very helpful. And I was like, well, fine, ignore that. Let's just carry on doing what we're doing. And she said, ask for a second opinion. And it hadn't even occurred to me that was an option. And it's some of the best advice that I had, and I would always give it to someone else because, ask for a second opinion. It was fine. They didn't challenge it. They just referred us to someone else, and that person gave us the diagnosis
How have you found her not being able to speak at the age that she is?
It is hard that she can't speak. I always feel like I'm being disloyal to her by saying that, because she's such a lovely little girl. She's so gentle. She's so sweet. She's so happy. But it's hard. She gets really frustrated, and she can lash out because she's frustrated. And in a lot of ways, I speak her language. I can understand what she's trying to tell me most of the time. She'll use hand holding. She'll lead you places. If we're at home, she knows where things are, so she'll gesture to where we keep her tablet, or if she wants a drink, she'll gesture to the cupboard where the squash is kept, or where the bananas are kept, or she'll go to the snack cupboard. And if we're not at home, sometimes it can get worse because she doesn't know how to tell you where the thing is that usually lives there. I think we've spoken personally before about that sort of grief for the parent you thought you'd be and the child that you thought you'd have. And it's a good way of describing it, because I think there were things that I thought about having a girl, and they may still happen, but I was excited for all the imaginative play stuff. I was excited for Barbies, and I'm just not sure she's going to be a Barbie kid, and it's fine if she's not. She might not have been a Barbie kid anyway. But I, I was all those little things that you're like, okay, that just might not be our reality, and you just adjust. But I think all children are different to the idea you have in your head, because I think before you're a parent anyway, for a lot of us, it's being an aunt or a friend and being just the fun parts.
I think so many people will relate to that feeling of, you do have a kind of image in your mind of what it's going to be like when you're a parent based on, your own childhood and probably for so many parents it's not, for so many different reasons. But it's definitely, I think it's a life lesson that you have to address, have to face quite early when you have a child that is neurodiverse or has additional needs in whatever capacity. Yeah.
I always say, one of the sayings is that I think you become who you are as a parent at 3 a.m, because that's the point that you don't see when you're not a parent. And you can spend ages with your nieces and your nephews and your friends' kids, but you don't see them at 3 a.m. Whether your child's neurodiverse or neurotypical, I think it rings true, because those moments when they're, asleep in your arms or just need your comfort, or you instinctively know what to do to comfort them in those moments. That's being a parent, and
you can't give them back. Yeah, I think that was the main thing for me.
Yeah, it's true.
24/7,
and it changes all the time with no warning. We've had a lot more deregulation, I'd say, in the last, probably even the last month. A lot more meltdowns, and I think part of it is probably school. Everything's changing. Our kids are due to start school next week as we're recording this, and it does create quite a lot of anxiety about her starting school. 6 months ago I wasn't that worried, and now I am quite worried. But I think we just have to see, and we just have to face it front on. And I think the biggest advice that we've been given, and the biggest kind of guidance we've been given from Briony's Senkos and the Senko at the school, is just being open to potentially changing her route. And it might be that mainstream isn't always going to be the best route for her. And we're just trying to be open to that, and we're trying to do the research for that now. So if it does come to the position, to the point where we do have to change her to a specialist school, we're ready, and we've done the research. We know where she needs to go, and we're on the waiting list. But there's always, you never get to relax. I think a child with additional needs, there's always the next thing to fight for, the next goal to hit, the next form to fill in.
Yeah, it's a difficult journey, but it's the unknown, and we talk about all the time. And for those listening, I think finding a group of people who I can call my good friends, that just get what you're going through, it's been life-changing for me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I met Amy, we were at baby group with our youngest, my little boy and Amy's little girl, and I think I was talking about Briony changing nursery, and I said, "Oh, but we think she's autistic," and Amy said, "Oh, my little boy's the same," and I said, "Oh, she does this," and she said, "Oh, yeah, same," and you just kept saying same, same. And I was like, "Right, we need to have coffee."
Yeah.
I'm not playing this friendship cool. I need you in my life. And then we literally just voice note 47 times a day. Yeah, ever since then. It's probably about a year ago. But we met so by chance, and now they're going to the same school. And yeah, I'm so grateful. And we've got this lovely network of Sen mums, and it's just really nice to sit and talk and be honest. And we don't even always talk about being Sen mums. It's just sometimes about, yeah, it's hard, and being able to laugh about it.
It's so nice to have people that you can talk to that they just get it. They're not judging you. They're not judging your parenting skills. It's not about that at all. It's actually just like, actually, are you okay?
Yeah, I have so many moments when she's had a hard week, and I will get emotional talk like this, where I'm just like, you just want to do right by them, and you have to laugh or you'll cry. I am tearing up now, but like there's moments where you're like, should I quit my job and just look after her full time? Do I need to homeschool her? And I don't think that's the best thing for either of us, because I think we need our independence. We need our space away from our kids. She needs that stimulation from someone who isn't her mother. Nursery was a really good thing for her, because actually it's forced her to socialise. It's forced her to get outside of the home. I'm really glad I sent her to nursery. Looking back at it, because it wasn't my initial plan. My initial plan was childminder, because I was worried about the germs at nursery, which, to be fair, was correct. But
Brutal.
I'm not normally this husky. I just have a cold all the time. Yeah, but every now and then I'll have a meltdown, because I'm just like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision. I don't know if mainstream school is the right thing for her, and we just have to try, and we just have to see. And if it's not, we'll have to change it. And nothing is, that's all we're doing. And I think we're doing so much more than a lot of parents are. And something that makes me really angry about being a Sen mum is how hard the admin is, because you have to be able to write, you have to be able to communicate yourself, you have to be able to fight, you have to be be able to write eloquently about your child's needs. But there will be parents who don't have the education to be able to fill in 40-page forms. The DLA form is 40 pages long. They won't have the ability to fight EHCP. If it goes to tribunal, they'll be scared and they'll just give up. And
the local authorities really rely on that as well. From what so many people say.
Yeah.
And I think all the local authorities across the country have their own issues. I know where we live is no exclusion to that. But I think that their default position tends to be to just reject needs assessment and hope that people just won't fight it.
Yeah.
Because actually, if you don't have the support around you of people who've either gone through it themselves, or you don't have the confidence to do it for whatever reason, or, we've been really fortunate. We've been supported by the nurseries as well, who've helped us to put all that documentation together. If you don't have that and you feel totally on your own, what about children who, mums and dads and carers who see that their children need the help but maybe aren't in the nursery setting? Then what?
Yeah.
So difficult.
There's not many EHCPs that get through first time either. It's a real fight to get documentation to ensure that your child's going to get a better education. It shouldn't be this hard.
Get the help that they deserve.
Yeah. Sarah, what are some of the things that would you say that you found most challenging about Briony since being on this journey of motherhood?
I think the most challenging thing is not always knowing what she wants, and not knowing if I'm doing the right thing for her, because I have to advocate for her. I have to make decisions for her. There are things I try and push her on, but there's some things that I don't push her on anymore. I don't push her on food anymore. She likes what she likes. I just want her to eat. And I've found we found a rhythm. She eats enough to have a balanced diet, but she does eat pasta with sauce every single night for dinner. And because she's quite interesting with food. I don't think she has sensory issues with food, but it's a communication thing with her. So she knows what she trusts. And the amount of times I've had a conversation with my mum or my mother-in-law, and they say, "Oh, I thought she would like that." And it's like, yeah, I think she probably like it too, but she won't try it. She won't try that chocolate cake.
Alex is the same.
Definitely gonna like
what he likes. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the moment she's decided that dark brown cake doesn't look trustworthy. It's like, okay, you're missing out, but it's fine, I'll have it. But yeah, she only trusts pasta if it's fusilli, so the twisty pasta, and only if it's red. So she won't eat plain pasta. She won't eat pasta with a creamy sauce. But the good thing with red sauce is I can hide a lot of stuff in red sauce. So I make a roasted vegetable and mascarpone pasta sauce. It's very nice, actually.
Yeah.
So I know it's got protein in it. I know it's got loads of vegetables in it. And but she doesn't eat any meat because she doesn't trust it, even though she would almost definitely like a chicken nugget. And she loves crisps. Currently, she's gone off toast, which is really annoying because that was quite a staple food group. But, we'll get back to it. But it's, you just have to find what they like and work with it. And it's just something that there might be points where she might be open to trying something, but she won't tell me, can't tell me. And some children, I think you can say, well, try this because it's like this thing that you like, and they would understand it. But then I also know that a lot of neurotypical children are incredibly fussy as well. So,
I think kids just love pasta across the board, don't they? It's like it's just a staple meal that you're like, any child is going to love it.
Delicious.
But it's frustrating when you're a foodie, because I know you're a big foodie, and you had an Instagram page all about food, and when your daughter's just eating certain foods, but that doesn't mean it's forever. And one of the best things my friend said to me once was, just remember, we're all winging it. And this was before I knew Alex was autistic, and it's so true. I think we all don't know whether we're doing the right thing by our children, but we're just doing our best. That's all you can do. Yeah. So
I agree.
You're doing a great job, Sarah. Don't doubt yourself ever.
You need to hear it sometimes, though, I think, because you hope you are. But I think as parents in general, there's always going to be that fear that you do that one thing that's reach your child. And yeah, I think kids of the 80s often have those conversations about, well, my mum forced me to eat this thing or do this thing, and I've never got over it. And I hope I've not done that, but who knows? I would love one of the things I dream about is that hopefully she will overcome her communication issues more and be able to speak to me, and when she's 20, I can talk to her about this and say, do you remember what it was like? Do you remember me trying to talk to you? Could you understand me? And I find that really fascinating. I find people who were diagnosed as adults really fascinating, because I wonder what they were like as children. That's a tangent, but I do find it really, really interesting, all the different elements to autism. Because, even all three of our children, they're similar in some ways, but they're very different in other ways. And I think, and what we're all discovering through our journey is just, there's so much to it. And we're learning all the time.
She'll turn around and she'll go, oh, I love that pasta sauce that you used to make.
A good mum.
And I can't believe I didn't eat that cake.
I know. She wouldn't eat my corn.
I've got it. Yeah, I love cake now, Mum. It's the best. I think it's also important to mention some of the things that she's doing that you didn't think she would do. Because I think for people that are at the start of their journey, Kirsty and I have spoken about how Max and Alex are doing things we never expected them to do. And I'm sure there's things Briony is doing now that she wasn't doing a couple of years ago. So yeah, what's some of the things that stand out to you?
I think what I find interesting is when I realise she's taught herself something. And this has been happening for a while, since she was at least 2. She was not far past her second birthday when we realised she was putting numbers in order. And nursery sent us a video of her doing it, putting numbers 1 to 6 in order. And they was saying, actually, the other children her age aren't doing this. And she clearly picked up on the sequence and was just trying to find the order in it. And now she can I think she could probably put numbers up to 100 in order at this point. She loves numbers. If she sees them anywhere, she'll stare at them. She's really, really, really interested in them. And I think it's just because they make so much sense to her. She knows the alphabet. She can so she puts letters in in alphabetical order. We're pretty sure she can recognise some letters. So again, she's taught herself that. This was quite a while ago, but realising she could match colours, all of those things that you usually would teach a child, she's just watching and learning all the time. And actually, she doesn't miss a trick a lot of the time. And you realise how much she's picking up just by watching, because that's how she communicates with the world. That's how she interacts with the world. I think the other thing is her tablet. So we bought her a tablet probably a year and a half ago, and actually to try and encourage her to use it and play games and stuff. And actually she mostly used it for iPlayer. But for a very long time, she'd guide our fingers to the buttons the buttons within it, to choose the episode of whatever she wants to watch, to choose the app she wants to go on. And it was fascinating to us because she knew what everything was. Like, she knew how to come out of an episode, she knew how to swipe through, she knew how to pause, she knew how to rewind, but she wasn't doing it herself. And while it was really interesting, it was also a bit frustrating. We'd be sort of trying to get ready for work and she's got your finger trying to rewind the same 3 seconds of Hey Dougie over and over again. You're like, this is actually lovely, but I really need to go. And then we were away earlier this year and she's never been very receptive to us taking her hand and guiding her. It just doesn't make sense to her. But I was like, let's just give this a go. So we took her hand and hit play on whatever we were watching, and it was like a light bulb went on, and now she just sits and uses her tablet and do really quite advanced things on it. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine who said, my 7-year-old can't rewind on the tablet. And I mean, I think we've all talked about the same 3 seconds over and over, but it's how they're learning. And she does a lot of that, a lot of repetitive watching of things, a lot of watching the same phrase over and over again. And she's now sort of discovered more educational apps on there. So there's a counting app that she's really into. There's a colouring app. It is interesting to me how much she's taught herself with that. And I think reading more about kind of the apps that children can use to speak, like AAC, and I've seen at Briony's new school, they use iPads a lot. And I think that's going to be a big way for her to communicate. And I think it's something that we don't know how to have it all the time. We have we don't have it in the car unless it's a really long journey. We don't know how to have it in bed unless she wakes up at 5 a.m, in which case I think that's fair enough. So it's not all the time, because otherwise she would just be on it all the time. But I think it's a really big learning tool for her. And I think it's, I feel that the opportunity there is really good. So I think it's really interesting just seeing how much it's helped her education. And it's encouraging her. So things like mark making, she's never been interested in, and now she's getting more interested in that. And I've also noticed that she's been copying her little brother. We're pretty sure, neurotypical, very into scribbling, very into just the way he plays is so different to her. The way he talks is so different to her. As I know you've both talked about, like he overtook her speech-wise quite a long time ago. And it's really, really interesting for me watching how his speech is developing, but also I watch how the two of them are developing together. And while he's much more into her than she is into him, I see her watching him, and then often he'll do something and then she'll do it, or he'll be into something and then she'll want to investigate it, and it will be something like a toy xylophone that I showed him how to run the little stick thing up and down it, and Briony could never get that, and then he did it, and then Briony did it. And scribbling on, we've got a blackboard that he was scribbling on, and now she's scribbling on it. And so I think ultimately just having him in close proximity to her is really going to encourage her to just, it helps her with those social skills, but it also helps her kind of learn, and seeing, someone who's got good communication skills and is doing things in a slightly different way. I don't want to change how she does things. I want her to find her own way, but I do think it's interesting how much she's learning from him.
What's her sleep been like? Because a lot of people with children with neurodiversity talk about the sleep being
a big problem. But yeah, have you found that?
Yeah, the sleep is interesting because sometimes it's fine and sometimes it's not. And we definitely see when something has made her deregulated, sleep is where we often see it. And what used to happen was if she'd sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and take a long time to fall back asleep. And she'd often wake up laughing. She'd just be laughing really loud for like 2 hours. You're like, lovely. Simmer down. And what's tricky is because one of the things with Briony is that her comprehension is getting better, but it is still not great. And so the concept of it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it's still nighttime, you need to go back to sleep, is a really hard thing to describe to her. She doesn't understand it. And if we went downstairs at 3 a.m, she would just assume that it was the day starting and then would fall off a cliff at 2 p.m. or whatever, which is really tricky with school and with nursery and things. You just have to so you have to really try and get her back to sleep. And ideally, so genuinely we sort of go and make sure she's okay, and then we're like, hey, lights off, back to sleep, and eventually she will drift back off. But what happened what had been happening when she was really deregulated was she was waking up angry and frustrated and really upset, having meltdowns in the middle of the night, really screaming. We weren't sure if she was having nightmares, but they were becoming more and more frequent, kind of nightly. And we were having kind of one wake up a week roughly, and then we were just having more and more, and starting to despair of what we could do, because actually for the most part she'd been a good sleeper. We've heard about some autistic kids who are up half the night. Got a friend whose child split nights, and I think she does 4 hours of sleep, 4 hours awake, 4 hours of sleep, which is just brutal. And I don't experience that, which I'm very grateful for. One thing my husband suggested trying, I think literally last week, was we usually leave a nightlight on in her room just so if she does wake up, she's not going to hurt herself. She's, she knows where she is. And sometimes she wakes up in the middle of the night and starts jumping on the bed, so you don't, you want her to be safe. He's like, let's try turning it off when we go to bed. So about 11:30, whenever, 11:30, it's more like 9:30. But we go to bed, we turn
like the animal, Sarah.
I know.
11:30.
Turn into a pumpkin by 9:45. But yeah, so we started turning it off when we go to bed, and her sleep, literally since we've done it, has been great. We've had the odd night that she's we've heard her wake up and she's gone back to sleep within half an hour. She's waking up quite early, but not. I always think if you're past 5, that's fine.
Yeah.
Where she can get through from a 5 o'clock start. From a 4 o'clock start, she might struggle. 5 o'clock is just about right, I think. And yeah, it's made a huge difference. And it's just really interesting because I think one of the challenges with a child who doesn't have very good comprehension and whose communication is still developing is you have to show them a lot. So a lot of times I just have to sort of demonstrate a thing and try a thing. So we're trying to demonstrate to her that it's still dark. It's still night. So if she's waking up and her room is dark, she's kind of seeing that visual cue as it is bedtime. And what's interesting is actually since we've done it, when she's waken up happy again and not upset. I can't quite work out exactly why she was waking up, why the light would make her wake up upset, but I don't know whether it was just the shadows or something kind of scaring her. Not sure. You'd think logically the dark would be scarier, but I guess it's closer to being asleep. But so much of it is guesswork.
They stir in the night, and then because we also do exactly the same. Max has a nightlight when he goes to sleep, but then when we go to bed, we turn it off. And if the light's on or if there's noise in the room that stirs him like just a little bit more than normal, he can be up. Like we've had trouble with Max's sleep from an early age where he didn't really wake in the night, but early waking was a massive issue for us. Like any time from 4:30. How am I supposed to, let alone you, how am I, you can go for a nap at nursery halfway through the day. I am on my last legs here. Yeah, it was really brutal. And he's still an early riser. But I think if there's anything that sort of disturbs him, and we have the same connection with
deregulation or dysregulation, and it affecting his sleep and how he wakes up in the morning.
Yeah, I think some days
something in it. I think that anxiety must just play on their mind, maybe.
I think so. And I mean, we all do it, don't we? We have a bad day and we wake up stressed and thinking about it. And I think it's just, when you really think about it, you can kind of connect a lot of our grown-up feelings to our child's feelings, because there are similarities.
And it must be so hard when you can't communicate how you're feeling. You touched on it slightly, and I know Kirsty can relate to this, but what hints and tips have you got for people whose children have meltdowns? How have you sort of found ways to cope with it? Because I know you've struggled with it in the past.
Yeah, I feel like we're still learning. And actually it was something that Jordan said in her episode about giving them space. And actually that is what we're realising, because my instinct is to go and to cuddle her and to give her a squeeze, because she usually loves the squeeze. She loves pressure. She finds it really comforting. She loves the feeling of hands over her ears. It's a real kind of anxiety soothing stim that she does. But when she's having a meltdown, she does not want you to touch her. And if you do, she will lash out. She will try and kick you. She will bite you. It's trying to kind of identify what she needs and also try and distract her while still giving her space. So we have certain things on the tablet that we will put on, which will often try and distract her. When she's been really deregulated at night, initially our instinct was keep the lights low, put something relaxing on. But we had a few times where she just couldn't snap out of this meltdown spiral she was in. So actually we turned the lights right up and we put something really stimulated on her tablet that made her go, what's that? And actually it snapped her out of it much quicker. And then actually she calmed down. It seems so counterintuitive to what you'd think you should do in that situation, but actually it was about snapping her out of it. And I still don't know whether these are the right things to do. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And it can be hard when she's lying on the kitchen floor and kicking and you're worried she's going to hurt herself. And you do sort of have to try and... We do tend to try and stop it as quickly as possible. But actually, I don't even know if that's the right thing to do, if I should just let her get out of her system. But I think once... There's usually a point when she will calm down and then she will want comfort, and that's when we'll go to her and make sure we're there. That happens at night when she's kind of calmed down. One of us will get into bed with her and give her a cuddle, and then usually she'll just go back to sleep with us, and that's fine. But it is tricky, and I've said to my husband before that it sometimes just feels like guesswork. Let's try this and see if this works. And he's like, it's not really guesswork, it's instinct, because you know your child and you actually do know what works for her. And he's right, I think, and it is a mixture, and it does sometimes feel like guesswork. There is an element of let's try this, let's see if it works. But there's always an element of instinct, because you forget that I spent 4.5 years with this child. I know her really well. And I've watched her turn into this person, and I could usually tell you what's caused the meltdown. A lot of the time it's hunger. Those days where we've been out and about and she's not found anything she wants to eat, so she just hasn't. So she's eating crisps all day, which aren't going to fill her up. And then by the time you're like, can you eat the thing that's actually going to fill you up? She won't. And then we have a meltdown.
It's too late, isn't it? Tiredness and hunger.
Yeah.
And the weather we found as well. Really hot weather seems to really set Max off. And I mean, I don't like being hot, so I can definitely relate to it. I get quite agitated, so I can imagine that would be quite frustrating as well. Like if you can't cool yourself down. And it's really hard, isn't it? Because but for us, sometimes things will work and sometimes they won't. So like, oh great, well that worked last time, and now it's definitely not working this time. But I don't even feel like I've got any hints and tips. So you answered that really well, because I don't know, we're just trying to not get ourselves in the situation in the first place, like try and reduce the anxiety as much as possible.
Yeah.
How's your family been with it, Sarah?
So interesting. My sister, I'm very close to my sister. Her youngest is autistic, and he's about a year and a half older than Briony. So she was a bit further ahead of us on the journey, and they're two very different children. He's got quite big sensory issues, so he's one of those children who would live in t-shirt and shorts all year round if he could. He doesn't really like the feel of material on his legs or his arms. He's very, he'll walk on tiptoes. He's got quite a lot of real sensory seeking behaviour. It's lovely now because we can kind of go through the journey together. And actually something my sister said is she doesn't have anyone local who gets it. She doesn't have her little send mum group like we do, and which I've said I really value. But we're really grateful to have each other. But it was interesting when we were on the pathway to acceptance, even before diagnosis, just kind of accepting that she was autistic, because I struggled with that quite a bit. And my sister would sort of say, "Oh yeah, my son does that," and that's just like he does. And I think, oh, they're not the same. And actually, they're really not. They're really different, but they are both autistic. They have both been diagnosed. I think it's tricky because there can be an element of defensiveness sometimes. So and sometimes that's coming from me, not. But I think now we're at this point where we have each other to go through it together, and that's really lovely. And she really gets Briony, and Briony's really comfortable with her. And then our parents, I feel like our mums have they've got to grips with her. My mum's really good at finding toys that Briony will love, like the Finley toys, like she found this Cogs toy that she loves in a charity shop. And my husband's mum is she looked after Briony for quite a bit when she was small, and because it was COVID and we weren't sure, we didn't want to go for a nursery immediately, and so she's very much Briony's safe space, and Briony's very affectionate with her. And I think it changes all the time, and sometimes we have to say that won't work, that will work, but for the most part it feels like they get her and they let her have the space. And we still have moments where I have to remind my mum that we're not pushing Briony to say tar after you hand her something, but that's so instinctive to my mum that's what you do, tar.
Yeah, my mum's the same. Yeah,
there's more important things for these children to learn than saying thank you, that manners will come. I mean, my little boy Nate has started to say thank you. He doesn't know what it means. It's just a little rhythmic thing.
Naturally,
give something, and you give him something, and he goes "Dadu." It's very cute. Somebody gives you something, and he says it, and I don't know what that means, but it's very cute. And I'm not going to stop you doing it. But yeah, it takes a while. And actually, something that Briony's new teacher said to me was at one of the settles. I said, "Oh God, sorry, she took that toy. She's not very good at sharing," and she said, "It's okay because the other children are good at sharing. And so don't worry that she's not sharing, that, we will get there.
I'll work on that, yeah."
But also all the other children, it's about teaching them about, difference. And if they're, the people around her are showing those skills, and, she will learn them. But I thought that was really interesting, and I hadn't thought about it in that way, because I have it all the time in the park or something, where she'll go over to someone and take something. Oh God, sorry, she's autistic, she didn't realise. And everyone's always very lovely when you say that, but it's still embarrassing because you don't want your child to take stuff off another child. But then again, my neurotypical child does it too. So
yeah, exactly.
A lot of children do.
Alex dropped a whole pot of beads at one of the settles, like all over the floor, and he just walked off, and she went to start picking them up, and I was like, oh, he understands that that's not okay. So I called him over and I was like, you need to pick these up. So he started doing it, and I was about 5 of them in the class just came round and helped. Just, they weren't asked to help, they just all came. And I just thought, again, it's that whole thing, they just did it because they know that that's an important thing to do, to help. And I thought, it's just so sweet. Yeah. Are there any funny things that you can mention that Briony does that just make you laugh? Is there a few things that come to mind?
I mean, she will find the most annoying things on CBeebies to watch over and over again, or on YouTube, or certain weird phrases. There's an episode of Hey Dougie where the imagination badge, and there's a bit where one of them goes, "I am the Imagineer," and she likes to watch that over and over and over.
Oh my God, so does Alex. Yeah. That's so weird.
It's really weird. She's very into things being in order. So she loves rainbows and she loves colours. But if there's anything that's rainbow coloured, she wants it. So we have to hide birthday candles from her. She loves sweet things, despite the fact she doesn't trust chocolate cake. So we'll go to a restaurant and she'll just like get in people's faces if they're eating ice cream. It's like, come away, come away. She does that a lot. She's also recently become really into live music, which is quite interesting. And we've gone to the park and people are playing saxophones or something because it's summer. And then again, she gets really in their faces, but she's just really happy and she'll just be jumping up and down aggressively at them and like sort of flapping her hand and clapping and smiling. But it's really sweet, and actually it's obviously something she's getting a lot out of. And I think she's it's lovely seeing that. But she's very, something I find it's funny because it's so sweet, is that she's very affectionate, very trusting. And one of the things we've had to do this year is that we really struggled with space in nurseries locally, and so she ended up at 3 nurseries, which was not the initial plan, but it's just had to end up that way. And it's meant that she's been very quick to trust new adults. And we found in a lot of situations that she'll just find any adult and go up to them, take their hand and get them to just like lead them off places. And I see it in the park all the time. I'm sorry, she's mine. Take my hand. But she's even done it at medical appointments.
Finally, Sarah, for those at the start of their journey, what advice do you have? And I guess maybe what advice would you have to yourself a couple of years ago at the start of your journey?
I think just being open to all the possibilities, because it can really feel like autism is a bad word, and it's not. A friend of mine said to me when I was started to investigate it, initially she said there's never been a better time to be autistic, and that really stayed with me, because it's true when we think about how things were when we grew up. And even talking earlier about people being diagnosed as adults, and I know a lot of people being diagnosed as adults now, especially people who've got autistic children themselves, but it just wasn't understood when we were kids, whereas now so much more is understood about autism. People are so much more accepting of it. People are so much more understanding that there's all these different elements to it. There is support available if you know where to look, if you know where to fight for it. I think if you're worried about anything, raise it, ask for help as early as possible, because it does take time. We asked for a referral when she was about 20 months old, and it still took probably a year for anything to happen. I think something I advised a friend actually recently who's in a similar situation to where we were when she was about 20 months old was, you can contact a private speech therapist and just have an hour of their time and get some advice, get some strategies. These are all options. And I think it's, if you can reach out to people who are further along the journey than you, I think that's always going to be the thing that's going to help you the most. And don't be scared by where they are, because it doesn't mean it's where you are, but also they've gone through a lot to get to that point. I think if I was talking to myself now, 2 years ago, I'd be like, oh God, that's where you are. No, that's not where I want to be, but it is where I am. And also I've gone through this journey. I accept it. I think knowing that autism actually, it isn't a bad word. Like I said, it explains so much. So accepting it means that it answers a lot more questions. It helps you start realising that there's all these things that you think your child's doing, that they're the only child that does. There aren't. There's lots of children who do things that way. And they're following their own journey, they're following their own path, but it's not necessarily they're not necessarily the only children who are following that path. There will be children who do things in similar ways, which means that there's support available, there's advice, there's ways to help them along the road. But yeah, someone said to me earlier this week, she was like, be that parent, just ask for support, pester, be annoying. And I think that's also just great advice, just because you just take all the information you can get in, but also just push for it, because you're the person who needs to fight for your child, needs to advocate for your child, and no one else is going to do it if you don't.